The alarm rings. Your training clothes are ready. The program is already written. And before your feet touch the floor, your mind begins searching for a reason why today should be different. Maybe you need more sleep. Maybe the session would be better tomorrow. Maybe the program needs adjusting. Maybe you should watch one more explanation before you commit to doing it properly. But in that moment, knowledge is not the problem. You already know enough to begin. The decision was made while your judgment was clear. Now, discomfort has arrived with a counter-proposal. There comes a point when asking for further instruction becomes another form of delay. You have read the book, you have watched the explanation, you have saved the program, written the plan, listened to the advice, and promised yourself that you will begin when circumstances become slightly more favorable. Perhaps you are still missing some knowledge. Most people are, always. But the more uncomfortable possibility is that you already know enough to begin correcting yourself, and you have not yet accepted that the responsibility has become yours. Before this is over, I will ask you to choose one standard and treat it as a binding for 7 days. Not to prove that you are perfect, to practice correcting yourself without waiting for someone else to do it. In one translation of the Enchiridion, Epictetus asks his reader a question. What teacher are you still waiting for that you defer to him correcting of yourself? At first, this sounds like another version of the familiar message that nobody is coming to save you. But it is more precise than that. You may not need saving. You may need to stop behaving like a permanent student who is waiting for the next lesson before he is allowed to act. Teachers matter. A good teacher can save years of confusion. A coach can see mistakes that you cannot see yourself. A book can give language to something you have felt but never understood clearly. Other people can reveal standards that you would not have discovered alone. There's no strength in pretending that guidance is unnecessary, but guidance has a limit. A coach can design a program. He cannot complete the session. He can correct your technique, yet he cannot make you lower the weight when your ego wants to keep it on the bar. He can explain restraint, but he cannot close the hand around the appetite that is ruling you. At a certain point, asking for another explanation becomes dishonest. Not because you know everything, but because the next piece of information is no longer the main obstacle. The obstacle is that you have not begun treating what you already know as binding. This is what makes perpetual apprenticeship attractive. As long as you are still learning, you do not yet have to be judged by the standard. You are preparing, you are gathering information, you are searching for a better method, you are waiting until you understand the process properly. And all of that can look responsible. Sometimes it is responsible. There are moments when the honest action is to admit that you do not know and ask for help. But there are also moments when another question is only an attempt to avoid the answer you already have. The difference is simple. Will the new information change the next action? Or are you hoping that it will remove the need to act? A beginner can still say that he did not know. A mature person must eventually admit something harder. I knew enough to act, and I did not. Most people are not completely without standards. They know roughly how they want to behave. They want to train consistently, speak honestly, control their appetite, complete their work, keep their word, stop allowing temporary feelings to rewrite permanent priorities. The issue is not always that the standard is absent. The issue is that it remains perpetually negotiable. You decide that you will train 4 times this week. Then the week becomes inconvenient. You decide that you will control your intake. Then the meal is social, stressful, or maybe looks really appealing. You decide that you will finish the project. Then finishing would expose it to judgment. So you discover one more improvement that must be made first. The standard remains in your mind, but it loses authority the moment obeying it carries a cost. At that point, it was not yet a standard, it was a preference. A standard that you continually renegotiate is only something you enjoy agreeing with. It has no governing power. Epictetus tells the reader to treat the principles he has accepted as though they were laws. That does not mean turning every minor deviation into a moral catastrophe, and it does not mean that the first plan you write must remain unchanged forever. There's a difference between a principle and a plan. Training consistently may be a principle. 4 sessions this particular week are planned. Honesty may be a principle. The exact words required in one difficult conversation are a matter of judgment. The principle should govern you. The plan should serve the principle. Sometimes injury, illness, new evidence, or reality itself will require the plan to change. But make that change deliberately. Do not rewrite it in the moment merely because obeying it has become uncomfortable. Review the rule when your judgment is clear, not while appetite is arguing for an exception. Once you have carefully decided what is right, stop reopening the entire case every time fear, laziness, or discomfort presents a counterproposal. Some decisions should be made once and then obeyed many times over. If training matters, you should not need to conduct a philosophical debate before every session. If honesty matters, you should not invent a new moral theory each time the truth becomes expensive. If your work matters, you should not require a fresh wave of motivation before returning to it. The purpose of a standard is to reduce this negotiation. It tells the weaker version of you that the matter has already been considered. The decision was made while judgment was clear. The feeling of the present moment does not automatically outrank it simply because it is current. Epictetus tells his reader further that he is no longer a youth, but already a grown man. But the point is not merely age. There are young people with remarkable self-command, and there are older people who still require constant external pressure. The deeper point is that there comes a stage when correction can no longer remain someone else's responsibility. A child is governed largely from the outside. The parent provides the rule, the teacher provides the deadline, the institution provides the schedule and the consequence. These structures are necessary. They teach order before the person is capable of carrying order internally. But maturity requires a transfer. The external rule must gradually become self-command. This is one reason physical training reveals so much. In the presence of a coach, a team, or an audience, effort is easier to produce. The environment carries part of the discipline for you. The more revealing question is what remains when you train alone. The gym is nearly empty. Nobody knows what weight should be on the bar. Nobody will know whether you shorten the final repetition. And nobody will praise you for reducing the load because your technique is beginning to break. Nobody will be disappointed if you skip the quiet aerobic work that supports the larger goal, but does not make you feel powerful. What do you do when the room offers no applause and no punishment? Do you follow the plan, or only the parts of the plan that support the image you prefer to have of yourself? A person who behaves well only under supervision has demonstrated compliance. He has not yet demonstrated self-command. Adulthood, in this sense, begins when the standard continues to exist, after the authority leaves the room. That does not mean you no longer need teachers. It means that the teacher is now refining someone who has already accepted responsibility for his own conduct. People often imagine their real life beginning later when the schedule settles, later when motivation returns, later when the current stress disappears, later when they feel more confident, later when they know enough to act without uncertainty. The future version of every person is always better prepared. He wakes more easily, he eats with restraint, he trains consistently, he publishes without fear. He no longer needs to negotiate with himself. But this future person is not approaching from somewhere ahead. He is being rehearsed by the decisions made right now. Every day of delay is an empty space between intention and action. It is practice. You are always training something. Sometimes what you are training is strength. Sometimes it is patience. Sometimes courage. And sometimes you are training the habit of postponing your own life. Each time you say tomorrow without a legitimate reason, tomorrow becomes easier to say again. Each time discomfort is allowed to reopen a settled decision, discomfort gains more authority. Each time you make a promise and quietly abandon it, the next promise becomes much less credible, including the ones made to yourself. This is what makes Epictetus' image of the contest so severe. He says that the Olympic Games are now, they cannot be deferred. The contest, in this sense, is not a dramatic event that will eventually arrive and reveal what kind of person you have become. It is the meal in front of you, the session scheduled for today, the work that remains unfinished, the conversation you keep avoiding, the temptation to lie because the truth would damage the image you are trying to preserve. These moments feel too ordinary to carry much weight. That is why they are easily dismissed. Character is rarely decided in one cinematic act. It is accumulated through decisions that felt small enough to postpone. You keep waiting to become the person who acts correctly. The action in front of you is how that person is made. Fitness is not the whole of life, but it makes this principle unusually visible because training leaves a record. The session was either completed or not. The training log shows how often you trained. The unused running shoes show whether endurance remained an intention. Repeated behavior shows how much authority immediate appetite was given. None of this can pronounce a complete verdict on a person, but it can show whether a stated standard became behavior. Training gives you a place to practice converting principles into action. You learn that discomfort does not automatically change the plan. You learn that motivation is welcome but not required. You learn that reducing the weight can be an act of discipline rather than cowardice. And you learn that one missed session does not need to become a missed week. But the lesson should not remain trapped inside the gym. A person who can suffer under a barbell but cannot tolerate the discomfort of honest speech has developed only a very narrow form of self-command. A person who follows a program but refuses to apologize, decide, or take responsibility is still dependent on external pressure in the places that matter most. Fitness and the gym is the laboratory. Life is where the findings must be applied. There is a danger in speaking about the standards too harshly. A person may hear that every decision matters and conclude that one failure destroys the entire project. That's neither accurate nor useful. You will break your own rules. You will oversleep. You will miss a session. You will eat beyond what you planned. You will delay work that should have been finished. And sometimes you will discover that the standard itself was poorly designed and needs to be reconsidered. The goal is not to become incapable of error. The goal is to stop turning every error into permission. One missed session does not erase years of training. One uncontrolled meal does not determine a physique. One fearful decision does not define a coward, but every response to failure rehearses something. You can respond by correcting course, or you can build a story that protects you from the need to correct anything. The first response strengthens self-command. The second strengthens surrender. The danger is not usually the isolated defeat. The danger is learning to treat defeat as an instruction. You miss Monday, so the week is ruined. You exceed the planned meal, so the rest of the day no longer matters. You fail to publish on schedule, so the project returns to indefinite development. You break the standard once and behave as though consistency now requires a perfect restart under ideal conditions. This is procrastination disguised as purity. Adult response is simpler. Acknowledge what happened, judge it accurately, correct what can be corrected, and return to the rule. Do not turn one failure into an identity, but do not turn compassion into permission either. Self-contempt is not discipline. Neither is endless self-forgiveness without correction. The useful middle is responsibility. You do not need to punish yourself, you need to resume command. Guidance can clarify the principle and make good behavior easier. It cannot replace the moment when you decide that the standard applies now. No teacher can install character as though it were information. At some point, you must begin correcting yourself. Correction is not contempt. The purpose is not to stand over yourself like an abusive supervisor searching for evidence that you are inadequate. The purpose is to see a deviation and respond without theater, not denial, not self-hatred, and not an elaborate explanation, but correction. You may not know the perfect program. You know that doing nothing will not make you stronger. You may not understand every detail of nutrition, but you know that repeated uncontrolled eating will move you away from the goal. You may not know the perfect way to finish a project, but you know that unfinished work cannot help anyone. You may not know how the difficult conversation will end, but you sure as hell know that indefinitely avoiding it is also a decision. Act on what is clear. Learn while moving. Correct during the process as evidence appears. But stop waiting for complete certainty to grant you permission to begin. Choose one standard you already believe, not 10. One. Choose something small enough to obey, but meaningful enough to produce evidence. Examples might include 3 training sessions this week, a 20-minute walk each day after work, some form of protein at the first meal, the alarm without a second negotiation, pressing the snooze button, 30 minutes on the unfinished work before entertainment begins this afternoon. Write down what obedience to this standard looks like. Decide in advance what a legitimate exception would be. Then, for 7 days, stop reopening the argument at the moment of discomfort. If you fail, record it accurately and resume at the next opportunity. No punishment, no ceremonial restart next Monday, no using one failure to cancel the rule. The purpose is not to prove that you are perfect. It is to practice becoming the person responsible for your own conduct. Epictetus ends the passage by invoking Socrates. You may not yet be Socrates, he says, but you should live as someone who wishes to become like him. The order matters. We want to become disciplined before discipline is required. We want to become courageous before facing fear. We want to become confident before acting in uncertainty. We want to become worthy of the standard before submitting ourselves to it. But the qualities do not arrive first. They are built through the action. Following the rule when negotiation would be easier is how discipline is formed. Moving while fear remains present is how courage is practiced. Keeping your word when abandoning it would be convenient is how you become someone whose word has weight. You already know more than you are currently living. That gap is where the work is. No further teacher can make today's decision for you. No future Monday can obey the standard you abandoned this morning. And no perfect plan can compensate for a life spent preparing to begin. Choose one rule you already accept, you see as good. Obey it at the next opportunity. If you fail, correct course without theater. The contest is not approaching. It is the decision directly in front of you. The contest is now.